Hello and welcome everyone once again to Conquer the Cave. Your host Doa and Charmer here with you for what is going to be a pretty epic match, because I don't know if you remember Charmer, but last time around we had Aces come to play as a challenger and he played extremely well. Great high level play, but today we have someone coming in who is perhaps, I would say objectively based on results, the best player we've ever had play on Conquer the Cave. In that Charmer, he's not just one, but two planetary qualifiers in a row. We've got none other than Munzstar playing today, who won the Pasadena qualifier here in the LA area, and then the very next week went to San Diego and won their planetary qualifier as well. So how hyped are you, Charmer, right now on a scale from, I would say, like one TIE fighter to a Super Star Destroyer?
I am executor levels of hype. Executor,
right.
Excuse me.
Executor.
Sorry,
yeah,
when we were recording our podcast, you made that joke.
I can't believe I messed that up. Yeah.
Well, no, you made the joke. You said executor, and then later you said executor, as like some people say, but not like the suite.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me realize when we were recording the podcast that I had a friend back when I played that game that would say executor. And then it was like you triggered a core memory in me. So I was saving it for when we recorded this. And so this is perfect. That is how excited I am. I am, 12 levels of excited.
I've corrected so many people on that over the years. And then I will not deny, I said it accidentally on the podcast. I didn't mean to say it. I know it's executor, but I just said executor. I don't know what happened. What went through my brain? I've been thinking too much about business, I guess, lately. And so that's the only thing I can blame it on. But let's take a look at the deck list before we get any more deeper into the weeds about the wonderful ships that are coming in set number 4. Aces this time around. Bet you didn't think I'd play the other deck. So last time around, you notice how Aces was prepared instantly with all of the bounties, all of the things that were stolen and all that on the other side of the screen. Turns out when they met to play, they were both planning on playing Bossk Command. And when they heard that, Aces was like, oh, I'll just change decks to something else so that we're not playing the same thing, and they both agreed on it, so it was fine. But today, Aces did bring his version of Bossk Command. He still wanted to play the list, so here's what we got. I think it looks pretty solid here. It's Bossk Command, right? You're ramping, you're playing the bounties that help you ramp, right? You've got a pretty solid early and mid game, and then those giant late game bombs, right?
Yeah, it is. I think a really healthy mid-range list as I look at this. I say mid-range even though there is very clearly some good top end as well. A couple of 8 drops. We also have Crate Dragon. That being said, the only thing that really jumps out at me, and perhaps it's just because there's not a lot of innate life gain in this list, I'm a bit surprised that it's not Energy Conversion Lab.
Sure.
My only reasoning for that is that if I am running Super Laser Technician, like I feel like I am cheating or something if I'm not playing ECL. And by cheating, I mean cheating on that combo. It's like my favorite thing to do on turn 2 is just run that guy into something else and ramp up. But that being said, it does make sense here. We've already got stuff that has natural ambush in Darth Vader, as well as Maul. And then we also have Emperor Palpatine at the 8 slot, which doesn't have true ambush, but has that when played that will also clean things up. So overall, like I said, not surprised, but also kind of surprised. Like it's weird. Like I get it, I understand it, but I don't know. It just feels so weird to see a green base that's not ECL.
I know it's a extreme valuing of that 5 extra HP. So we'll have to see if that comes into effect as we watch the games. And let's take a look at the opponent. And I was so happy about this. We've got Munzstar playing the deck that won him 2 PQs in a row. Again, won the Pasadena PQ and won the San Diego PQ. Smuggling is my real hand. And this is Han1 Tarkintown, which everybody's talking about now, but I would say before this deck won a couple of planetary qualifiers, really was only, again, like Xander at Fantasy Flight on some of the developer streams talking about this deck. But Munzstar managed to take it, get some wins with it. I think it's a really fun deck. I haven't gotten a chance to play it myself yet, but in watching a little bit and looking at the list, this is one that I might have to take out now.
Yeah, I actually love this list, and I'm seeing some things that are my favorite thing to do in any card game. If you have listened to me cover other card games, I have said it before, so I will say it here. making my opponent discard is my favorite thing to do in any card game, period. And so when I look at this and I see Spark of Rebellion, but I also see Pillage in the main deck,
The
I
main
also
board.
see Kira, which it can be like pseudo discard, and that like
Yeah.
you're making them not be able to play the thing they want to play. K2SO, you can choose discard if you are not valuing the damage necessarily. I love everything about the core deck list for this, and I can't wait to see how it gets utilized.
Yeah, this takes a lot of the best stuff that Han Yellow brings, right? Where you've got the Ezras, you've got the Tech DJ combo, but you also add in a lot of red stuff too, right? What if Ezra's bringing out a Cassian Andor now? What if it's bringing out a Kira when you attack with it? And then adding things in like the Pillage, right? Being able to add in the Blaster, although the Blaster you could include anyway, but just having access to things like Daring Raid as well, or Armed to the Teeth, you know, for some finishing damage. I really, really love what this list does. I love how spicy the sideboard is, in that we've got some Force Throw in there. We've got a couple Gamorrean Guards. We've got some high top end with the Crate Dragon, Shadowed Intentions as well. It's a really, really interesting list. And so I feel privileged that we're going to get to see two great players in this series, and one of them is piloting this really, really fascinating deck. So should be fun. And also, before we get into it, shout out to Aces as well, who went through and edited the entire VOD for us to include card pop-ups when things are play. He tracked the life on base, so I don't need to do it for once while I'm casting at the same time. I know. It's great. So I really appreciate the effort, Aces out there. Thank you so much for doing that. Also, shout out to Aces for getting us all the VODs from the Wichita, Kansas Planetary Qualifier that I'm starting to cast and put up on the channel as well. He was a judge at that event and was able to record the top table from round 2 all the way up until the finals. So that's going to be a lot of great matches coming on the channel soon. So keep an eye out for that. But Charmer, I'm ready to get into the game. How about you?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go into the game. And as you can see, we have Munzstar on the left with that Han1 Tarkintown, and on the right side of your screen, we have none other than our current Conqueror of the Cave. It is Aces playing the Bossk Command, but not Bossk ECL. So initiative over on the Munzstar side of things, it looks like, to start things off. And where will it go from here? I love the Showcase Han, too. You got to have the Showcase Han one with this.
Well, for those of us who are either lucky enough to get one or afford it, then yeah, absolutely. But
yeah, gotta love the
for whatever reason, the heroes I like to play continue to evade me. I don't have an Iden, I don't have a Sabine, I don't have a Yoda, but I do have like Cassian showcases and
cool.
Jin showcases.
Hey, I want a local with Jin. Don't trash talk Jin, right? So it looks like we got a little bit of a maybe a mulligan going on the Aces side of things. Shout out to the Munzstar as well for the playmat on that side as well. That's the Spark of Rebellion event playmat from back in the day, and then I believe that's the initiative token you get from the Planetary Qualifier as well.
Yeah, that mat, if I am remembering correctly, is actually the TwitchCon mat, because when they went to TwitchCon, I didn't know FFG was going to be there, and I remember emailing Xander, hey, were there any of those mats left? Because I would have went to TwitchCon just for that mat.
Yeah, fair enough. Looks like we have a discussion going on tokens, I guess. Not going into it just yet here.
Yeah, I think what they are doing is showing that these are real tokens. They are not magic tokens.
There you go.
Where I don't know. I'm just making stuff up.
Well, I like the reusable muffin cups as the token holders. As someone, I actually bake a lot of muffins. It's a fun thing I do with my toddler. She's like about 20 months old now, so she can like stir things and everything. But we make muffins usually about once a week. And I've been thinking about getting these these reusable muffin cups. I don't know if they're good or not. We'll see. But we got the new R2-D2 coming in, new from Twilight of the Republic. And this is one that lets you do a little bit of hand fixing and gives you that nice 2/4 body on the board.
Yeah, and that 2/4 body is just absolutely beautiful when you can take control of the ground arena with it early as Han. It does buy you a bit of time for you to kind of stall for your bigger plays.
Yeah.
We know that the mid range is like the real meat of any Han list, but when you can start with, you know, an incredible stat line like this, it kind of gives you that peace of mind.
Right. And there is a bamboozle there in the discard as well. Interesting placement for the discard. He's one of those guys that puts the discard above the deck. Okay, all right. And we got a Bounty Hunter's Quarry going down on R2D2, sliding that towards the top of the screen there, so we know it's attached to that unit over there. And that's a great bounty because you can grab a unit out of it. So just kind of helps aces, keep a little bit of presence on the board and hopefully, again, survive to those late game bombs. That's what it's all about on the Bossk Command side of things.
Yeah, and you also just what you're really doing is you're kind of setting up a big swing turn where perhaps you put this bounty on, you get the damage on, and then at some point what you'll be able to do with that particular bounty is if you can't wait to kill that R2D2 for when your Bossk flips, you can kind of turn a corner and potentially turn that into 2 extra units that hit the board instead of 1, because you would get to double that trigger, which would allow you to kind of, catch up. That being said, we have the 2 damage going on the base because no unit on the board turn 1 for aces means we are going to be falling behind a bit. And it looks like we're just going to see another Bossk activation as well.
All right. Yeah. Just taking the damage on the R2 up to 2. And what's the plan going to be for aces? The resources, unfortunately, are blending in very well with the playmat itself. So we can't really see how much is there. At least I can't. Can you?
It looks like there is 3 resources now going up to 4 on the side of Munzstar.
Well, I can see that side of the board.
Yeah, the other side, I was about to say, yeah, you are correct. It is blending in a little bit. But that...
All right. Well, we'll have to just kind of judge by what gets played then. And so, meanwhile, we have a Munzstar going up to 4 resources there. What's it going to be? Looking through the resources. Oh, okay. The tech smuggled out here. And so the first tech has hit the board. So with the bounty applied to the R2D2 and a little bit of focus on that, the question now is, does aces have a card in hand that can handle the tech quickly? Or are we looking at maybe a DJ coming out soon? Oh, it's another Bounty Hunter's Quarry. Whoa, okay. Interesting.
Oh, okay.
So just setting up, a little, check it out. Force choke right on the tech. I was going to say, having something to handle that tech right away is so good here. Gets the benefit of the Bounty Hunter's Quarry as well. I think it's a deeper search with a unique unit, if I recall correctly. And so that means, so that means something that costs 3 or less is going to come out.
Yeah, this is exactly what you have to have, because if you don't have this answer right now, I think you probably lose this game regardless of whether the DJ is there or not.
It gets hard.
The reason that I wanted to say that is because the lack of board presence for back-to-back turns would mean that aces mulliganed, because we did see the mulligan, right? It means aces would have mulliganed and then just found a dead hand. I was getting really worried.
Right.
But now not only do you answer the tech, but you get a unit on the board, and it's one that also helps to stall, right? This has the Sentinel, which is really important as well. It really just slows down what would have been a barn burner of an opener for Munzstar otherwise.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're the Han player, you got to go for it, right? You have a chance to go DJ Tech, you go DJ Tech, and if they can stop it, they can stop it. If not, then like you said, you get this almost insurmountable lead in many games. So you always go for it, just kind of cross your fingers, right? Looks like it was a Phase 3 Dark Trooper played by aces. I mean, it depends on the deck, but I feel like there's very few reasons where, unless you're really sure they've got something, you just kind of go for it, right? Ooh, and Waylay.
Yeah, I was about to say yeah,
Waylay on his own R2.
Yeah, that is a Waylay on the own R2, and that is something that we actually talked about on the podcast when I had said that there was a reason to run Waylay over Spare the Target at times, and what do you know? We see it here.
It's true. I mean, by waylaying his own R2D2, that gets rid of the bounty that aces put down on it. And we're getting close to the flip turn, right? We're getting close to claiming that double bounty potentially. And, if nothing else, the Phase 3 Dark Trooper could have just run into it too if aces had decided on that. So I do like the move from Munzstar, just denying that bounty, and the R2D2, when you play it again, it's just more hand fixing, right? So it's definitely one of those units that can sort of double as an event, right? Where you don't mind bringing that back to hand at all.
No, not at all. And what I really like about it as well is that when you play it, you get the hand fixing, but you also will get the potential benefit of getting additional value when you're trying to set up something like one of your Han plays for the future. You
Yeah.
don't have the Ewing reinforcements in here, but you do still want to at times make sure that what you are putting down for your resources when you're extending your hand and so forth is not something that you want to rely on, and you also kind of want to fill up your smuggle. And we actually saw Munzstar say very specifically, my real hand is smuggle. So
Yep.
it would not surprise me if that was the case.
Yeah, I'm sure there's things lurking in the resources that we're going to have to see come out later in the game. But for now, we've got the elite L337 hitting the board with the shield token. I like the shield tokens are actually Captain America shields. That's a nice touch. It's a nice little bit of flair there on the Han1 side of things. Believe initiative claimed by aces as we move on to the next round here. So a 2-2 with the shield out on the side of Munzstar, but where the Han1 deck really comes online is when you start having access to those 7 drops, right? When you start having access to the Emphas Nest, the Hans, whatever else we have in there,
So with that in mind here, we have Munzstar. Well, I was about to say, I think we are getting ready to go to the regroup. Yeah, there we go. Okay, readying. Munzstar was kind of throwing me for a loop because I was like, well, I think we're gonna. No, he's put it back sideways again, and I think there might have been some discussion there, but we are in fact going to the regroup. We're heading into really kind of a turning point for both of these players. That being said, Aces is going to start with the initiative, use that super laser technician to get rid of the shield on the droid, but also does allow Aces to get that additional resource and continue kind of pace by ramping on their own side.
Yeah, for sure. And doing a little bit more damage potentially later with that Phase 3 Dark Trooper. Remember, if Leet attacks into the Dark Trooper, then that's a situation where, there's a +1/+1, and it looks like that's going to be the case. So just 2 damage on there. That Dark Trooper is now a 4/2. So what's the plan going to be here? Is Aces, I'd say you're pretty incentivized just to attack in here. Yeah, why not? You have a chance to do 4 damage to a 25 HP base. You do it.
Yeah, that's 7 damage now on the side of Munzstar. Tarkintown still alive.
Yep.
Han is live for the deploy this turn, should that be the decision. But I think Munzstar is looking like they want to play something before they go that route here. Again, might just be baiting me. It is going to be a daring raid to clean up the Phase 3 Dark Trooper.
Yeah, a little bit more efficient damage usage. You save the Tarkintown for a little bit later in the game. This seems to indicate that we're not going to see like the classic double Han activation for the 7-drop coming down. It is also the Bossk flip turn as well. 5 resources for Ace here. And now we are going to have another resource dropped for Han. All right, so it's 5. So he'll have access to 6 total if he flips Han and attacks, I suppose. Might just be something for 5 from resources as we see the glance, the peak underneath there. And there's a flip for Han. Okay. And what's the response from Aces going to be?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because with how well his sleeves blend into
I know, right?
the mat and everything else, I'm trying to keep track in my mind, and I'll be honest, man, I've really been struggling. I wanted to try to keep track of how many resources are available, how many cards are in hand, but it's been frying my brain. So I'm going to stop focusing on that, and we're just going to say, hey, Bossk is attacking into Han, it looks like, and...
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, Aces has access to 5 resources right now, hasn't spent anything yet this turn, and I'm pretty sure we've been, I guess 1 ahead. So maybe it's going to be 6 actually. Yeah, because
I was going to say, right, because of the super laser. And that's what I was trying to make sure that I was mentally keeping track of. It was really frying my brain, man. So
yeah,
he has resources. That's what I'm going with. And they are going to be for a ruthless raider, and that will clean up the Han. So that explains why Bossk was willing to attack into the Han. And honestly, I think this is a win if you're Aces, because you have more damage on your opponent's base. Your base started with more health, but you also are going to end this turn where you still have your leader. Yeah, it's got damage, but you have that and that Ruthless Raider in the sky, which unless there's a Millennium Falcon or something coming out of Smuggle, you would have to assume Munzstar is going to fall behind on when you consider the lack of air we've seen so far from either player.
Yeah, and the thing is that Millennium Falcon, the new one that comes out, is only a 5/5, so it wouldn't even be able to just one-shot the Ruthless Raider, since Ruthless Raider is a 4/6. So even the Falcon doesn't necessarily do you a lot of good here. But I got to say, Cassian Andor from resources is going to come into play readied. That's going to do you a little bit of good. That's going to trade into the Bossk if you wish it. And I would think so. Aces is definitely expecting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do that. The Andor lives with 2 HP remaining. You send
Well,
the leader back to the leader zone. Maybe a different plan? Oh, okay. Going to base with this then. No,
yeah.
going to Bossk with that? I guess you only have, oh, didn't you have enough either way? What am I
So
missing?
he had enough damage either way, but when you wanted to use that resource this turn anyway,
Yeah,
just
I
to
suppose.
put it on,
Yeah,
what you're doing
sure.
now is you're saying like, I can, you either answer Cassian right away or I can get the additional damage in. But
Mhm.
what I was expecting before the blaster flipped was another daring raid, which also would have done the job.
Yeah, that was always a possibility too. Man, those leaves blend in so perfectly.
They do. It is like a magic trick, man. I am
I had
like,
to
I know there are cards there, and every now and then I can see just the silhouette. But when I was
Mhm.
trying to track it, man, it was frying my brain. So
You know, and I checked my my monitor color settings even to make sure nothing got changed. It just is the way it is. But we're keeping up with it. We're keeping up with it. We're doing fine. I think we're doing great. That Cassian Andor is doing great too, is it's able to do 5 damage potentially to the base if it lives long enough to do so. What's the plan going to be? Because right now the big drops are starting to be a potential play for this Han player, but same goes over on the Bossk side. And the thing is, I think the later this game goes, the better it's going to be for that Bossk Command player, and that is exactly why right there.
yeah,
One of the big reasons is Vader coming in.
what I was just getting ready to highlight was this Bossk list actually has quite a number of late game bombs when you consider there are multiple Vaders. We also saw Maul. We see the
Oh,
convention exclusive Palpatine showed off there, but I was about to say
yeah.
we also have Palpatine. There was even reinforcement walkers, which could be a great way to stabilize if Aces was running behind on health, but we know that's not the case.
Hmm.
This Vader cleans up Cassian and gets a phase 3 Dark Trooper, which will go and protect Vader as well. So Aces really just kind of showing off what can happen if you don't get that early pressure on him and he can play these late game bombs.
Yeah, I really like it too because we've already seen one daring raid used. We know Vader is vulnerable to Tarkintown, but again, that's your one use of Tarkintown, right? So Aces is kind of throwing down the gauntlet too with this Vader play, saying, "Hey, I got value out of it already. Now it's gonna. I already took out one card with Vader. Are you gonna give me another card? Are you gonna give me the epic action on your base to get rid of it?" And it looks like it's gonna be the base as Tarkenton takes out the Vader. I think that's the right choice on the side of Munzstar, but that's got to feel good if you're the Vader player, right? To be able to get essentially a 2-for-1 out of that and to put a 3/3 body on the board.
Yeah, when you can still like make those trades and come out ahead with that phase 3 Dark Trooper, even if it's not the most
Oh,
amazing
there you go.
unit, what you are still doing is you're forcing your opponent to spend resources to get rid of it. And so we do see this Plo Koon with ambush clean that up, which again, great play by Munzstar, but also would have been better used somewhere else as opposed to just running it in here to the phase 3 Dark Trooper, because we still have to have an answer for that Ruthless Raider at some point, and we have to factor in the fact that it's going to have that 2 damage potential on the when defeated, and Tarkentown's
Yeah.
already got 13 damage on it, and we know that this Han list doesn't have a lot of ways to gain health, if at all, that I remember.
I don't think there's really any. Not in yellow red. I don't think you're going to be gaining a lot of life.
Yeah, well, I know that there is the heroism gain health smuggle card, and I didn't see it in the
Oh,
main deck,
sure,
but
sure.
when
Yeah.
I was looking at the sideboard, I didn't see if that was included. But ultimately, what we're trying to get at here is now with 17 damage on that Tarkentown base, the clock is ticking.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That Plo Koon is an interesting include with this deck. I wonder how often he actually has the coordinate come aligned with that. Bamboozle is played here. Let's in an exhausted Ruthless Raider, it looks like. And oh no, just gonna take a look at the hand. Oh wait, that was Spark of Rebellion. All right, never mind. Wrong card popped up, I
Yeah.
suppose. Aces. But no, it's gonna be a reinforcement walker hitting the trash via that Spark of Rebellion, and that's kind of nice to get that out of the way. But like you mentioned earlier, Charmer, this deck is just filled with late game bombs. So it's kind of like, you're picking away at it's like taking the needle out of the haystack, but the haystack remains and it's just made of needles. I got
Yeah,
there.
and
I got
the
there.
the the worst part here for Munzstar is that, like, yeah, you got rid of the big thing, but what was left was also another decent space unit. And when you
Yeah.
already have zero presence out there, what are you going to do for, cleaning up that space arena? I suppose you could try to just race on the ground, but when you only have 8 damage left available on your base and your opponent is running a 30 health base, it's
Mhm.
not looking great. And now
Oh, is that
that's a
just a
daring
base?
raid straight to Tarkintown.
Yeah, and why not? Because that's 19 damage on base. That puts Munzstar in lethal range as far as the damage coming in from his opponent next turn. So this next phase, either you deal with the ships or you die, and we go to game 2.
And what's even worse is, again, if that Ruthless Raider can get the 4 damage attack in, even if you have something for punishing 1, you're stuck in a position where you're almost forced to only exhaust the Ruthless Raider, because that, when defeated, would
Right.
still threaten lethal. And
And
with that, it does look like they are just going to scoop and go to game 2. So
yep.
Aces with the victory.
Yep, that's right. Aces takes game 1 against Munzstar, and so we are going to game number 2 to see if our PQ champ can tie it up. All right, here we are for game number 2 between Munzstar and Aces here on Conquer the Cave. Aces, our reigning champion, taking game number 1. Let's see if he can finish it off in 2-0 fashion. It looks like Munzstar starting things off with a Spark of Rebellion, and check out that hand. 2 Phase 3 Dark Troopers, Punishing 1, and Vader. What would you grab
Yeah.
here? This is an interesting question.
So what's interesting is, I think punishing 1 is the answer when you look at the hand.
I
And my
agree.
reason for that is there's no turn 1 drop. So on the one hand, your Spark, normally you're trying to catch their turn 1 drop, but they don't have one.
Mhm.
So then you look at what's coming next turn, and since they already have 2 phase Dark Troopers there, you just take away the choice, right? So
Sure.
it doesn't matter if punishing 1 is better or not. I think that I would just want to deny them an option, because then I know what their hand is. I know what their course of action is. I could plan better. Also, we just didn't see many space units from Munzstar in game 1. We know that they exist, but we didn't see them. So with that in
Yeah.
mind as well, I think I would just want to make sure I'm not getting raced in space from an early standpoint.
I think that's exactly how I would state it, right? I mean, you just look at it in the most simple measure. They have more space stuff than I do. I'm afraid of space stuff. Therefore, we get rid of space stuff, He knows he can handle these Phase 3 Dark Troopers on the ground. And so it seems like the natural choice to ditch the ship. And there's that Ezra Bridger. I love running Ezra Bridger and Han. I know he's fallen out of a lot of Han double cunning lists, but man, what a great card to play on turn number 1. Big body, and then the ability to just play something off the top of your deck is just so good.
Yeah, it's great in Han1. It's also, if I'm being honest, just one of my favorite cunning units in general. It's one that I always was running in my Cunning Sabine list,
Mhm.
because when you have like Medal Ceremony,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
nothing that feels better when you can swing with Ezra and then play it for free. So even if you didn't get full value, even just getting 1 free XP token that your opponent was not accounting for can just make a huge difference. So I love Ezra and what he can do from the top of the deck.
Yeah. Also, the Force tag is really strong. I ran him in my Jyn Erso list, and it was nice to put down some Jedi lightsabers on him and get some value out of that back in set number 1. But a lot of fond Ezra Bridger memories in set 1 here. But we're going on to the next round here. It looks like
I
Bounty
love
Hunter's
this.
Quarry is the first play here on the Ezra. That makes it a little bit more dangerous to attack into the Phase 3 Dark Trooper, because there might be some other. Oh, look at that! He put a little bounty graphic up there. Oh, it's gone. I liked it though for the second. That was a neat little idea. We know it's on there though. We appreciate it, Aces. Meanwhile, Confiscate. Oh well, never mind. Bounty goes right into the trash, and Munzstar sideboarding in some answers.
Yeah, that is, I think, a really heads up play, because it does turn off the Bossk activation. But one of the other things that it potentially does as well is it allows you to make this a very straightforward trade where Ezra is going to survive. And
Yeah. Check it out.
and is that, I think that's coming from the top of the deck, because
Yeah.
it did not come from hand, it looked like. Yeah, so it also means we're going to get a Cassian Andor from the top of the deck. Well done.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a good approach here in game number 2 for Munzstar as well, where, we saw a lot of danger coming through the air from the Aces side of things last game. Munzstar saying, you know what, I mean, I can do my Han leader ability tricks, I can play bigger stuff, but sometimes it's better to just take the opportunity when you have it and just go wide, right? There's a daring raid to take out the Ezra, but that doesn't feel as bad when you still have a 3-5 on the board.
No, it does not feel bad at all. And this is one of those things where I think game one got out of control for Munzstar because he lost presence. When you really look at these two decks, they're both mid-range lists, but Munzstar is, at least in the early stages of the game, more likely to be the aggressor or be the beatdown, if you will, because with that ability to consistently ramp and play those things, you want to get out in front and force aces to a position where they can only answer like card for card and they'll just stay behind in terms of tempo. The moment aces got ahead in that first game, it really spelled trouble for Munzstar. And so I think that this is a great way for Munzstar to try to maintain pressure, at least here in the early goings. We haven't seen aces get units on the board. And
pillage. Okay. All right. So this is kind of, in a sense, board protection as well, right? Player discards 2 cards. Look, he does have a hand. It's true. Aces does have cards, and we can actually see them when they're not face up for a second anyway. But what is going to be discarded here? We know there's, in theory, another phase 3 Dark Trooper because we saw, Kylo's tie silencer. Hey, I like the silencer discard. You can just play that right back again.
Yeah, I was about to say we should believe it's a Vader unless he ended up resourcing it, because we did see that revealed in turn 1. And since he played one phase trooper, I would assume that the other one probably got resourced early. It would also make sense as that being something that you would want to hold on to, because Vader can help you clean things up when you're trying to catch up. But who knows, right? We don't know. We only saw what was revealed early. But yeah, this Kylo tie silencer doing work. A lot of times it's just played because it's a nice early space unit, but when you can get the actual value, just feels so good.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because I feel like you don't get to do that very often unless you're discarding it intentionally because you're playing Kylo or something. And there's the daring raid. Okay, yep, that's going to take out the Kylo's tie silencer. But hey, it was another card that Munzstar ended up having to use to control Ace's side of the board. And while I don't think Aces is in anywhere near as good a position as he was at this point in the game, in game 1, it still feels good to be using a lot of stuff out of your opponent's hand, right? Especially when you look at a end game where you're going to be going much bigger.
And now it's looking like Aces wants to deploy this Bossk, but we have a readied Cassian on the other side, which obviously doesn't trade into Bossk. But if you're trying to ensure you get that bounty value, and we don't know what the other card in hand is, again, I suspect it's a Vader, but we don't know for sure. Perhaps you want to save that Bossk deployment, but I think what happened is Aces was kind of looking at the board state and saying, all right, if I don't play something, then what else am I doing, right?
Yeah.
And just passing and letting your opponent run free doesn't feel great. That's a recipe for disaster. So Bossk does get deployed, but looks like it's going base.
I think that's fine. I think you've got the bigger unit. You are saying it's on you to deal with this, and I think that's a fair assumption to make, right? I mean, this Bossk can't be waylaid or anything like that. It's going to have to be taken out with damage. And so you can see, Cassian Andor feels pretty obligated to just go into Bossk. And there's a phase 3 Dark Trooper to protect that Bossk theoretically at the beginning of the next phase. No cards in hand now for Aces as well. So a little bit of a tricky situation. But, again, if you're this Bossk, if you can just make it to the later stages of the game, maybe you can come back. But this being the Han Flip Term Charmer, it is looking much better for Munzstar here in game 2.
Yeah, and we still have Tarkintown live as well. So while Tarkintown can't be used on Bossk, it is specifically non-leader. We do still have that available. We didn't even, that I remember anyway, get to see it used in game 1, which also means you're leaving value on the table.
It ended up being used against the Vader, but it was kind of, too little too late at that point. It just wasn't, it wasn't going to turn things around.
At the very, very end. But
So,
with that being said, what I like about this exchange is that, Aces is still trying to force Munzstar to respond to the board instead of take advantage of the kind of tempo of the game and start putting that damage to base.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Aces also is the one that has access to more healing in the form of those reinforcement walkers. So unless those were boarded out, that's another thing that we can watch for.
Right.
And then the last thing is, because that was the other phase trooper, then I'm just going to assume that it was the Vader that was resourced earlier. We saw him show both of his hands to the camera, so I assume that meant, all out of cards at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, keeping something that you're more likely to be able to play sooner is probably a strong idea as we see the boss go back to the leader zone. Because we know, again, that this list is running things like pillage, it's running things that get cards out of your hand. So sometimes where you would be willing to sit on that 7-drop in hand for a few phases, it's much, much more risky against a list like the one Munzstar is piloting. So I actually kind of like the idea of Aces to just focus on cards you can play before you probably have to discard them,
Yeah, I think that is totally fine. I don't think that keeping Vader was necessarily the right play to begin with. It was just one of those things where if you're playing one, some players might be tempted to keep the other just to kind of give them some more versatility with their game plan. But
I mean, I'll be
for
honest.
now is an answer for tech.
I'll be honest. I probably would have kept the Vader, but I think that's probably the wrong decision. But that's I'd be baited into being like Vader will save me. But yeah, that's the tech coming out, and so again, what's the answer for the tech? Is there potentially another force choke in here? No, there's another phase.
Okay.
That's where we're going. All right. So initiative taken, I believe, by Aces. So I think I saw him reach over and tap that one.
Yeah.
So
the initiative is still on his side in terms of the token, but also again, Aces was kind enough to put that white initiative thing up at the top of the screen.
You're right.
Which has been going back and forth.
Yep.
What that tells me is that there's probably not an answer in hand, but if you draw it, you still want the option to play it. So just kind of playing to your outs.
Yeah, of course. And we know Aces is kind of in top deck city right now, with being reduced to 0 cards in hand at the kind of middle of that last turn. And so now you're just kind of hoping you draw into an answer, hoping you draw into some of those late game bombs. Palpatine would be nice here. A Vader would be nice here. There are answers, but will you draw them? There's a Maul popping up on the screen, and I would imagine that means it's going to hit the board soon. There we go. Yeah, Maul comes in, and that's actually going to go into the Andor for the purpose of doing more damage with Overwhelm. So could have attacked the tech and taken out potentially that bigger threat as far as card draw options, or card play options rather, but decides to opt for the maximum damage.
Well, what we are looking for now is some way for Aces to, I think, just generate more pressure, right? What we've actually seen, I mentioned the ECL thing, but what I was about to say is that we've seen that 30 health base be super relevant when it feels like Munzstar's been kind of in control for most of this game, but then all of a sudden, whenever I look down, I'm like, oh yeah, they're halfway to being eliminated, right? That base it adds up quickly.
Yeah, and you can see how seriously Munzstar is taking that threat from the Maul, where using that Daring Raid just to set up what I would imagine is going to be a Tarkintown play after this, just to make sure that Maul does not get another chance to attack. And yeah, there's the Tarkintown.
There's the Tarkintown.
You have to, right? You can't afford to take 7 damage at this point. It's just way, way too risky. But what's the play going to be? Initiative taken by Aces, so it's kind of just on Munzstar to play whatever he wants. It's going to be a Plo Koon. Okay. Getting
so
nice
Plo
3/6
Koon,
body.
even when you don't get the ambush, and even if you don't have coordinate online, it's still a big sticky body when you play it just manually like this. When you factor in that 6 health, if you're playing against somebody that is running force choke like we've seen, suddenly that's attractive because it doesn't just die straight up to force choke, which means that you force them to either spend multiple cards on it or do something else. And when you can, again, try to just exert your control on the battlefield, I do think that's going to be your best path to victory if you're Munzstar.
Yeah, I agree. Just sticking more stuff, doing what you can. Obviously, if coordinate comes online, he's able to get a swing into base for 6 with Plo Koon. That does a big chunk of catch up as far as damage goes. But you feel, when you're running into a 30 health base, in a meta of 25 health bases, you kind of feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, I got to do how much damage? Ruthless Raider comes down, and that's going to be another big threat in the air for aces. But yeah, on the Munzstar side again, you're just like, man, now I have to do 25 damage. I've gotten him down to 25. That's where I started, you know? It feels bad a little bit.
And I got to be honest, that is not what you wanted to see if you're Munzstar, because
No.
again, not as much space on the side of Munzstar in either game thus far. That's a big sticky unit. You rightfully pointed out, even with Millennium Falcon, you're not going to take it out by itself. You still have to deal with the when defeated trigger. It almost makes me wonder if Munzstar kind of wishes they had like a change of heart or something where they could take advantage of that.
Yeah,
We
right.
do know that Waylay is in the list, but this is like one of the worst units that
Ooh.
you could ever want to waylay, because then they're going to get that when played trigger again. But this is
Yeah.
great.
I like this a lot. Armed to the teeth. So it makes Plo Koon a minimum of 5 that it swings for, but potentially 8, right? And when Plo Koon does swing, that means Tech is going to suddenly swing for 4. So this could suddenly be a lot of damage coming Ace's way. And there's a Bounty Hunter's Corey, which, you know, is annoying, but with 2 Phase 3 Dark Troopers already hitting the trash in this game, you're not as worried about a Sentinel coming out of this. So this one I'm not as worried about if I'm going from the Aces side. And look at that, the
Oh.
Hotshot DL44 blaster from the resources, and that is a big swing there. That is going to be 7 damage going to Ace's base here, I believe.
Yeah, and that's where,
Yikes.
as you rightfully pointed out, we're also going to get that 2 extra damage coming from the tech as well.
Yeah.
On top of the additional power from armed to the teeth. So
Whoa, another blaster. That's a 6 damage Tech. This game is turning around in a hurry, Charmer.
all right, well, you said, hey, that 30 health base, it feels like a slog. Oh,
It
I'm gonna have to
did,
deal
it
25
did.
damage. And Munzstar said, okay, I hear you, let's do it.
Yeah, let's just do a smooth, a 13 damage in 1 turn here, I guess, if my math is right.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was a pretty big swing, and unfortunately for Aces, no closer to cleaning that up on the ground.
Yeah, how do you deal with this? I mean, I guess maybe Palpatine, if he's got it,
I was
can
just about
handle
to say,
one of
what you need
those.
is the Palpatine.
Force Choke does do some work. It does remove the tech. It does give Munzstar another card, to be fair as well. But at the same time, you got to go for it. And now the search with Aces, what is he going to find from the Bounty Hunter's Corey? Gets that deeper search again because it was on a unique unit. I guess you're really looking for a Sentinel here, but I don't know how many he has left. He may only have 1 in the 3rd Phase 3 Dark Trooper.
As far as Sentinels, we could also see something like a Punishing 1 come down, which would be able to ready itself if Plo Koon were to somehow be defeated, but it doesn't look like they ran into that, so we're just going to go with more space pressure.
Yeah, that feels a little bit rough, right? To only get the Kylo's TIE silencer. And I think Aces, you talked about playing to your outs earlier. I think this is exactly what he's trying to do, saying, all right, I can't handle the ground right now. I just got to go space. I just have to try to finish this game. There are 10 points of health remaining on Munzstar's base. The ships on the board for Aces represent 7 damage of that 10 he needs. So it's definitely well within the range of Aces to potentially end the game next phase, but that is going to hurt a little bit. Oh, and there goes Punishing 1 via the Spark of Rebellion.
Yeah, so does look like the plan for Aces might have been to just deploy to space and try to erase, but
Well, yeah.
We still have a big attack potentially coming from Plo Koon. We also have now our droid friend L337, aka Elite, hitting the table. And I would, expect at least 1 more unit to come down as well, which will turn on the coordinate when that Plo Koon attacks, if I'm correct in my assumption.
That's the only reason I can think of that you would wait to attack with the Plo Koon. Running into red-green, a unit that large is probably not going to get taken out with 1 shot. But look at that, the Andor. How much damage is that going to be? That's going to be 5 when you factor in the arm to the teeth.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because the Plo Koon is going to get the additional bonus from the coordinate, and then because Cassian will get the bonus from Arm to the Teeth. What you are getting is enough damage to win. So we're going to game 3.
Plo Koon would have dealt 10 damage with a swing and then follow that up with a Cassian Andor swing for 5. And yeah, that will definitely take out the base of aces. And now we are going to game 3. This has been a great series so far. Let's see who takes it. All right, here we are. Game number 3, Munzstar versus Aces. Aces trying to hold on as a conqueror of the cave, but going toe-to-toe with a multiple Planetary Qualifier Champion is no joke, but he's played well. Munzstar, though, coming back in a big way in Game 2, Charmer.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to put it, right? Coming back in a big way. We were like, haha, you're going to have to deal 25 damage. And then 2 turns later, like we blinked, and that's what happened. And
it was,
continuing the blazing pace here, we're going to see an Ezra Bridger on turn 1, which is, of course, the dream play whenever you're playing the cunning version of Han from set 1. Wow, just beautiful.
It's a good start. There is that 3 damage in the air to worry about. Looks like Kira is going to be discarded from the Han defeated resource at the beginning of the next phase. But yeah, we talked about all the damage in game 2, and then let's review. It was a 13 damage turn and then a 15 damage turn from Munzstar to just end it kind of out of nowhere. And I'm like, holy cow, I have a whole new level of respect for this deck now. But also for the pilot too, you know, to craft a game state that lets you do something like that. We're getting a show today. This is a great series.
What my biggest takeaway is, and as I'm saying this, of course, want to point out R2D2 now coming down for Munzstar. I think Aces might want to consider for the future scanning officer for the sideboard, because when you're playing against an opponent that has so much smuggle, there is nothing that feels as good as getting rid of the smuggle. But also when you play that early on, you can actually disrupt their plays, because when that card gets replaced, the resource enters play exhausted, like they always do. It can really hamper things. And we're going to see a punishing 1 answer on the side of Aces here. So ground versus space, here we go.
Right. A little bit of hand fix again from the R2D2. And I think Aces say, you know, I know what works for me. I know what works in our matchup, going to space, hoping he can't handle it, right? And that's exactly what's happening here in game number 3. So does Munzstar have the answers? That's the question. I believe we also saw Aces. I think he sideboarded in some resupplies between games. We didn't include that just because we like to go game to game, because the sideboard stuff usually comes out, you know, during the game. But you know, that I think is something that, you know, we probably do need to see. We do need to see some ramp early on. That said, I think you're happy with a lot of space stuff. What's the response going to be from Munzstar here, though?
Yeah, this is a weird one, because if you can keep pace in the air at the same rate that your opponent is developing to the ground, and you're not trading back and forth, you're going to be favored just by the nature of you having that 30 health base. And if you're not clashing into each other, your opponent's going to have to play something like a Daring Raid or whatever to turn on their Tarkintown before they get that value. But one of the other really nice bits here is with that punishing 1, and that's going to be the lead off attack. When you can get the trigger for that. So if you're not familiar, whenever something that's upgraded is defeated, you can ready it if you would like. It does allow you to potentially stay ahead when you're considering that race. But of course, as I'm going on my monologue about why the space race favored Aces, turns out Daring Raid shuts down the Kylo's TIE silencer, which will slow Ace's game plan just a little bit.
Yep, that's right. Bounty Hunter's quarry there on Ezra, it looks like. And, you know, you have to kind of make a choice with which space unit to attack with. And we know Waylay's in the deck, that could bounce the Dengar, right? We know Daring Raid's in the deck, that can take out the TIE silencers. So it kind of feels like you just have to pick one and hope they don't have the answer for the other. And didn't work out, unfortunately, for Aces here. But he did have the answer for the Ezra in the form of the Force Choke. And what are we going to find from the Bounty Hunter's quarry now?
I think at this point, what you're hoping for is the phase Dart Trooper, and that's what we find. Just because with R2D2 there, it doesn't clean that up on its own. But as you were saying, and what I was saying, it did come to fruition here, right? We also get to ready that punishing 1, because the Bounty Hunter's quarry is an upgrade. And so when that was a Force Choke on the Ezra, meant punishing 1 got to ready, and we will likely see a attack again to get 3 extra damage on the base, and we do see that. So we are seeing masters of each of these decks
Oh yeah,
pilot them pretty well.
absolutely. Yeah, these are two very high level players, obviously, playing in the series. I love that we got a tie. Oh, the blaster. Okay. And ooh, the confiscate in response. He's just gonna play it. And that is interesting. Okay, so just trying to use those resources, trying to just make sure you get the value out of what you got on the board. Millennium Falcon coming in, though, and this is going to be something that can do a little bit of damage to base. Not enough, though, to handle the punishing one. So I wonder where this Falcon is going to go. I think you just have to go base, right? Or do you go into the unit? I think you go base. No, he does
I think
go into
that
the unit.
you
Okay.
think you want to go into the unit potentially, because you can just choose to not pay for the Falcon.
Yeah,
and then
enough.
you'll get it back and put yourself in a position where either a Daring Raid cleans it, you have Tarkintown.
He hasn't used Tarkintown yet. Yeah, never mind. My brain shut off for a second there. Yeah. You definitely want to go into the ship because you've got the answers. Multiple answers here. Will the Tarkintown be used, though? That's the question here as we get to the end of the phase. What'll it be?
Well, I think right now they're trying to decide if they want to pay for the Falcon.
Yeah. Nope, there's the Tarkintown. Nope, still deciding on the Tarkintown. I think it was seeing if he wanted to have that up. Did use the Tarkintown to take the punishing one down.
It's one of those things where the decision, I think, comes down to whether or not you are going to pay for the Falcon. Because if you are going to pay for the Falcon, you don't want to leave the punishing one out there to clean it up, in which case you want a Tarkintown. If you're going to bounce it, then I don't think you use Tarkintown, because you're going to have more than one way to answer it, and that's something that you could potentially save. But in this case, I like doing this because now you have the Falcon. You still have a problem with this phase 3 Dark Trooper because you don't have a way to clear it on the ground. You do have Han entering the flit turn, which obviously Han cleans it up, but then that forces him to take damage and become susceptible to a Bossk counterattack. We're going to see the navigation of this turn, I think, be really important.
Yeah, I worry a little bit too with that Millennium Falcon having just a single hit point left. If a bounty gets placed on it, the Bossk ability can just finish it off and collect the bounty. So I feel like you're rolling the dice a little bit here with this one, but you know, the potential to have something in space to handle whatever they play. But yeah, there's the death mark. And this might get a little bit rough. Do you think maybe part of the play too was saying, hey, I would rather have you play a bounty on my space unit than on my ground unit?
It could be that, especially because if you don't have a way to take advantage of it right away, then you could just not pay for the Falcon, which would bounce the Falcon back before they get the value.
Right.
This also, and we're seeing this play out as I talk through it, but this also forces Munzstar to make that attack, or else they're not getting any value. So Aces is actually kind of playing Munzstar's turn for them when you go through this turn of events.
Right. You know, and that's why I was a little bit worried about leaving the Falcon out, just because the bounty into Bossk ability would seem like such a high likelihood threat. But it looks like that's going to be the case here either way. Han activation, maybe? Thinking about it. Yeah, okay. Going up to another resource. And this is the turn two. I believe that, yeah, Han can flip here.
Yeah, both of these leaders should be in a position where they can flip this turn, which is why I think navigation is going to be crucial for both.
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately you want to be the player who's acting last to try to clean up whatever surprises your opponent played here.
Right. Yeah, the old kind of general rule of thumb when you're starting the game is do whatever you can to avoid using cards in your hand, avoid using resources until you absolutely have to in a phase. Because you conceal the most information, and like you said, you get to respond the best to what your opponent's doing during that phase. 12 damage on the base for Munzstar.
I was just about to say, we are in a razor-tight game 3. When you look at the health totals, when you look at the board state.
And you notice, too, the rate of play has slowed down a little bit. Because we see the Han Solo flip. Both of these players really kind of focusing up, I think, and saying, all right, I don't want to lose this one. Han flip into Bossk flip. That phase 3 Dark Trooper in the way of, Munzstar being able to attack whatever he wants on the ground. Is there an answer here? What's the response? Because you want to attack with Han at some point to get the resource, I would imagine.
Well, and you kind of need to if you want to clean up the Dark Trooper, because R2D2 doesn't do it on his own.
Exactly.
What you're worried about, though, in my opinion, is whatever you're attacking with. So Cassian here, you delay and you give yourself another thing to clean up the Dark Trooper. What you don't want to do if you're Munzstar is put yourself in a position that whatever it is that cleans up the Dark Trooper, if Aces has the Bounty Hunter's Quarry, which they could place on something and then attack into whatever has, damage on it and get that, once per turn, double your bounty trigger, that would kind of let his board explode. So that's what I would be like worried about or trying to play around if I was Munzstar.
It doesn't appear that Aces has that in mind with the attack on the Han. It's hard to say because this kind of incentivizes Munzstar to use the Andor attack to take out the Phase 3 Dark Trooper and then maybe trade leader to leader. A lot of times if you're the Bossk player, you can approach it that way too, right? Where it's like, sure, the double bounty thing is nice, but that's kind of icing on the cake, where the cake is really, having Bossk on that leader side and then just using the unit itself to do a little bit of board cleanup like this. But Munzstar really thinking through this turn. And it is a pretty pivotal one.
Yeah, we also could see something like a daring raid into this Han.
Okay. So deciding to sacrifice the Han, gets the 2 resources, takes out the Phase 3 Dark Trooper. What's the plan going to be?
Yeah, I wonder if that actually is messing up what Ace's game plan was, because when I was thinking about it, we had that bounty trigger. So Aces drew 2 cards off the death mark.
Yeah.
And when you looked at that attack, to me, that signals like it's trying to set up a daring raid, which would clean up the Han. But it's one of those things where you're hoping that they don't get that Han activation, because if you deal damage to the Han and they want to protect Han and they swing with Cassian Andor, and it wasn't daring raid, but it still would have done the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So if Cassian had swung and then you would have answered with this open fire, you would have stopped the Han from allowing that turn to continue. And this is what I was saying. You want to be the last one to act if at all possible. And it does look like Munzstar is going to be the one who kind of comes out on top when all things are done.
Yeah, just have the heads up awareness to attack with the Han because of the likelihood of something preventing you from doing that at all. Now, does he have something to spend those 2 resources on? That's what I'm kind of curious about. If he does, this will just be like a masterful phase. If he doesn't, it'll still be a really good phase.
I would say the likelihood is high, because that would also signal when he swung with the Han, you're prioritizing it, right? So I would assume you really wanted that activation before it could be stopped. But
so I think part of it is it looks like we're in the regroup phase now. Is I think what he really correctly identified there was that Han was very unlikely to get a swing at all if he didn't swing right there. So he was like, I might as well take out the Phase 3 Dark Trooper. I'm going to lose the Han either way. He's probably got something in hand to deal with it. And so he just went for it. Didn't have anything to spend the resource on, but just gets the most value out of the unit on the board.
I mean, it was a good read, right? It was very heads up when you factored everything in. And like I said, you had the draw from the death mark. You saw the attack into the Han. What you have to assume is that they have something there to clean that up. Wow, I'm looking at these sleeves against that mat, and obviously there is a card there on that Bossk, but
I know.
You would almost not know whatsoever.
It's like shout out to Aces. He's got the Vanta Black playmat and the Vanta Black sleeves. It's the color no human eye can see. Also, what's this random Boba showcase at the bottom of the screen just hanging out? He's like, hey, I know I was banned, but don't forget about me.
This is what I would be playing if I could play the real bounty hunter. But
there you go. Yeah. Don't you forget about Boba. Hey, there's still a perfectly good Boba leader right now, and he's in heroism. K2SO is discorded via the Han ability, as well as that yellow card, and I think that was a waylay. And timely intervention.
Yeah, it does look like a waylay.
What's coming out? A super laser tech. Okay. We're ramping, Charmer.
I love it.
Late game ramping.
I love it.
Yep. Takes out the Andor. I mean, it might as well be direct damage, which is pretty good. I mean, you pay for essentially 2 direct damage to Cassidy Andor and put a card into play as a resource. That sounds like 4 resources worth of value to me. Especially if there's something big coming next turn.
It kind of just makes the timely intervention free because it came from hand and it only costed 1.
Yeah.
The Super Laser Technician comes in readied when it hits the resource. So
very true. Very true. Looks like it might have been initiative taken as we do see the tech and the elite hit the ground from Munzstar here. So the board built a little bit, and now the pressure is a little bit back over onto Ace's side of things, where it's like now he has another board to answer to, specifically that tech, because at this point in the game, there's all sorts of good juicy stuff in the resources of Munzstar. The tech would love to play out.
But I would be worried if I was Munzstar, because if my opponent just ramps, like they play the ambush, they ramp, and then they pass, right? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Vader, Maul, Emperor Palpatine, Reinforcement Walker we know is in that list as well, which would allow you to gain some health, but I think that you would want something that's more like an immediate answer. Crate wouldn't be terrible, but after we saw all that burst damage the last time, I would be honestly kind of worried about that. I would want something that cleans up something on the board, and so we see Vader very quickly as they move to the next turn come down, and will we get another phase 3 Sentinel to follow this up, or is it going to be
might as well. I mean, Cell Block Guard. Okay, I forgot he was running that. Yeah, that's a card. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Cell Block
when
Guard.
You just want Vader to find you Sentinels, why not run them both?
Yep, can't disagree. What's the play going to be from Munzstar here? I mean, losing the tech hurts a little bit. 2 cards in hand. What's the answer here? Because, I mean, that Cell Block Guard is just such a brilliant little play, because it shuts down so much of what Munzstar is trying to do here. And not only get rid of the Vader, but also just, get into base eventually, right? And, you need a little bit more damage on hand as well if you're going to even do something like use Tarkintown to finish off the Vader.
Well, the Tarkintown's already been used. That was on the punishing one earlier.
Oh, yeah, it was. You're right. They didn't put the marker on it. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
When you factor that in, I think that you kind of want to clean up the Cell Block Guard. Really, you want to clean up that and Vader if you can help it, because you don't want a situation where they go into this next turn with Crate Dragon as a play. I was saying before, hey, I would worry if that was my only play, but once you have a little bit of a board to back it up, it's better. But Han Solo does, in fact, clean up Cell Block Guard very, very well.
Yeah, and, say you put a blaster on that Han Solo next turn, that could also clean up the Vader pretty smoothly, too. Initiative taken by Aces here, so we'll see if he's got an answer, because he's going to have the first action in the next action phase. But you got to have it, right? Elite swinging for 2 more damage, so the base health still extremely tight between these 2 players.
This is going to, I think, be really telling when we see what Aces does, because we could see Vader still just go base. That would put it up to 17 on the Tarkintown, which might, like, if you go base and then slam a Crate Dragon, that would be viable. If the Vader, say, goes into the Han, that might be signaling where we're seeing like a daring raid cleanup. We could also see it instead be like Vader into Han, and then you play a bounty onto Han and clean it up with Bossk. There's a lot of options, but whatever this first action is really going to signal to Munzstar what Aces is thinking.
Yeah, it's gotta be good. It's gotta be very impactful. That Han is such a big threat. One of the prime threats from the Han deck list over there. Such a good.
Are you trying to tell me that Han is good in Han?
Han is good in Han. It's almost like there's some hidden synergy there. Maybe not so hidden synergy. It is going actually. Yeah. Okay.
We might be a race situation.
Interesting. All right. I think Han swings into Vader. That's right, because he doesn't take any damage back, because he does his damage before the defender does.
We also
okay.
So we're going to see a reinforcement walker, which I don't hate, but what I was about to say is we also could have just seen another Vader. In situations where you know your first one's going to die, why not just get the 5 damage and then slam another one?
Yeah.
That would have been funny, but Reinforcement Walker heals and gives you a massive body.
I mean, this is such a big swing, right, in favor of Aces, because here we have 17 damage over on Munzstar's side of things. He's very close to death at this point. Only 8 HP left on Tarkintown, and there's a giant walker out there that does 7 damage on its own. It can heal. 3 damage taken off of Ace's base is an enormous amount for Munzstar to overcome again. Cassian Andor coming out. There's a daring raid, and that's going to remove the shield from Leet here. But this is a little bit rough. That said, we said the same thing in game number 2, and there was just an enormous amount of damage that came out of the resources. But this seems like a rougher situation to me.
I am actually really surprised we just saw that daring raid. And the reason that I want to say that is because unless you're fearing like blaster plays or something on that Leet where they're going to try to trade into the walker, I would have considered either sending it base or you just pass and take initiative, hoping that you're going to swing with the walker at the start of your next turn and then finish with the raid. Because again, we know that there's not a lot of health. So armed to the teeth here does mean that it was part of the plan to clean up the walker. So ultimately was a heads up play by Aces, but I don't know that I would have had the forethought to do that. I would have been so greedy and said, okay, 6 + 2 is death. Let's do it.
I mean, as you know, you and I are both aggro players, so that's kind of how our brains are wired, you know. So getting caught unawares by that play, I was thinking the same thing, you know. But then again, when you're playing that, just go face Ugzug style of card gaming that we love, you know, sometimes you remember, hey, you know, killing units on the board is not a terrible thing either. And Aces knowing that Munzstar had to handle that, right? That was a unit that could not be allowed to survive. Aces knowing that he's probably going to be drawing out some of those upgrade damage sources that we saw in game number 2, and that's exactly what happened. Still having that Han Solo unit on the board though is pretty good for Munzstar here going into this phase, and we are going deep with this game. There's a lot of resources on both sides right now.
Oh, the Han is like absolutely critical because if we see Aces do something like slam a Crate Dragon, Han would allow you to still have a pathway to clean it up and survive with the Han with taking minimal damage. A daring raid plus a blaster would mean you only take 2 damage from the Crate Dragon, but you would have it cleared and your Han would survive, right?
Right.
So with that Han, it's limiting what Aces can do to win this race. Aces, if I'm being honest, is really wanting to find something like a Ruthless Raider, which would go into the sky and then also get some of that when played damage. Because with that Han on the ground, you either need to get rid of it. So a Maul, something like that would work as well.
Palpatine.
Or you have to go around it.
Yeah. Palpatine would work there as well. Just because that's 6 damage you can apply right when it comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would take
6/6 overwhelm that does 6 divided any way you choose.
6/6
is he's the devil. Yep.
But why didn't they make him a 6/9? His order is 6. Oh no, it's order 66 as well. So it's not order 69. That's a different Star Wars movie. Anyway, Palpatine's return. Hey, somehow he had that, and somehow the reinforcement walker returned. It's reinforcing itself at this point.
Somehow Palpatine returned, but he was driving.
Yeah. And the client came in from the sideboard too. We're seeing it in the trash right now, but that's interesting to know that he brought that in. Ooh, 7 damage on base.
I really liked the bringing in of the client when you factor in the ability to stay alive to get to your late game bombs. And that's what we've seen. We saw game 1 go Ace's way when they survived to the late game and they played big things. Game 2 was lost when Aces couldn't find those bombs. So when you factor that in, it makes sense to go, well, let's just make sure we don't die and hope our late game is better than theirs. So I actually really like bringing that in.
Speaking of not dying, how in the world is Munzstar going to not die in this game 3 here? Because you think about what the options are in this deck, and I believe there was a Crate Dragon or 2 in the sideboard, so there's a little bit of extreme top end. Enfys Nest, 7-drop Enfys Nest could bounce that reinforcement walker back to hand, but that's just kind of giving your opponent more healing. You do open the door to maybe do some damage to base like that, but Munzstar is running out of options really fast here.
You know, I still don't hate that though. I also kind of like the idea of a waylay plus something like blaster plays where you're just getting damage in with the Han. Does look like we are going to see an attack from the Han to the base,
Yep.
just to kind of stall.
Yep, that's right. And it does do 6 damage. So that Han Solo does present a pretty serious amount of punishment that your side of the board can dish out. That said, no stuff coming from resources. So that makes me wonder if we do have like a big drop on the way.
Yeah, we could be seeing that.
Or a tech into something else. Force choke on the tech immediately. Aces had the answer.
Wow.
Oh, that tech was down there for like 0.2 microseconds before the force choke hit the board from Ace's hand. That is not what Munzstar wants to see.
Wow, what a beautiful answer.
Oh, he had it ready to go. And
Question, I guess, now is whatever Munzstar was going to play from resources, that's out of the question. But what did they draw, right? Maybe the force choke is giving them some other avenue, but clearly Munzstar was doing something because they had a plan, and that was just beautifully disrupted.
it's an awkward amount of resources as well. Plays another tech from resources this time. You never expect the second tech in the same phase. See the thumbs up from Aces, like, well, you had it. Now, this does mean that Munzstar can't play anything with the tech then. He's out of resources now. So the turn is still effectively stuffed, like you mentioned, and I think Aces is going to grab the initiative here. So, there could be an answer right off the bat from Ace's hand, but, at least Munzstar, again, has put himself in a position to, maybe play something out from resources that could turn things around.
What's worse, though, for Munzstar is because you had to do all of this and you don't have much left over, even if you don't have an answer for the tech, the Aces play what I would like to see is just reinforcement walker into Tarkintown, which would put Munzstar at critically low health on the base at that point. And I would be shocked if we see anything but that just to open. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it,
of course,
full immediate, like, okay, I readied for the sake of the camera. Now we're turning this sideways.
Bossk tastes blood here as the damage exceeds 20, up to 23. 2 hit points left on the base of Munzstar. That is one daring raid away from a win. Oh, and the Spark of Rebellion. Ruthless Raider. I mean, Aces is like, all right, well, you're going to want this one, right? The Maul and I think that's game right there.
Well, it is. That's why they were showing, because whatever you take, the other one will finish you. If you take the Raider, then the Maul has the ability to overwhelm over the top of the tech and still deal the 2 damage. And then if you take the Maul, obviously the Raider will get the victory as well. So congratulations to Aces. What a beautiful way to navigate that game 3. And again, I just want to give the shout out to having that wherewithal, having that heads up to play the daring raid on the elite and force the essentially the entire board of Munzstar to be used to clean up that first walker, because as you said, we're both aggro players. I was doing the math in my head. I'm like, walker plus daring raid is game, but again, kudos, congratulations. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, Munzstar really did everything he could to stay alive in that series, but it is our Conqueror of the Cave, Aces, from our own Ice Cave Radio Discord that manages to take down the 2-time Planetary Qualifier Champion and stay alive. That's 2 wins in a row now for Aces. So we've got a serious Conqueror of the Cave right now. I think whoever comes up next against him is going to have their work cut out for him. It's going to be a tough series no matter what, but I'm excited, man. I feel like the action has been heating up lately on Conquer the Cave. So hopefully you all enjoyed that out there. Any parting words before we end this one, Charmer?
Nothing like substantial. All I want to say is that with the level of play that we've seen over the last couple of Conquer the Caves, I'm so excited for whatever people are going to be bringing to the table when we get Jump to Lightspeed, because we already have good players playing good Star Wars Unlimited, and when we get that new set that I think is going to offer support to a number of different archetypes as well as create some new ones, I just want to see what people do with it. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
I mean, the game is just like, it's never going to be, it's like, it will have never been better than how it'll be in set 4, I think, at this point. I think set 4 is going to be like the best the game will be so far, which should be kind of like every expansion anyway. But like Set 4 just adds so much, right? All the piloting stuff. I'm a sucker for ships anyway. Everybody knows that.
Yep.
But like you mentioned too, we've been talking about it a lot on the podcast. The support for older decks and older archetypes, Rebel, Imperial, you name it, right? So Set 4 is going to be a ton of fun. And, you know, we're only like a couple weeks away from having our first Set 4 Conquer the Cave as well. Like the expansion is coming soon, you know? So that's exciting. But thanks again to everybody for watching. If you want to compete and Conquer the Cave, go to our Discord, go to the channel there, and there is a pinned link to a sign-up sheet. Otherwise, if you can't find it, just DM me. I'll help you out. Otherwise, if you're not a member of the Discord, go join it. We have people talking about the game every day, and they're all great, and Aces is one of them. And thanks again to Aces for all the editing work on this one. Makes my life a lot easier, and hopefully everyone enjoyed that out there. I know you did. But that's about it. Thanks again for watching Conquer the Cave, and we will see you next time.